Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane's studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us here on this Monday. I hope your work week's off to a good start. If, in fact, you are starting your work week, maybe you got the week off, which is a good thing as well. Either way, I appreciate y'all making us part of your day. Going to talk a lot of LSU football here in hour number 2. Coaching staff, Houston, lots of stuff coming up here. But I wanted to start with who LSU is showing up to the Texas Bowl with. Matt Moscona reported over at LouisianaSports.net kind of what the outlook for the team is with opt-outs. And you can read that for free up at LouisianaSports.net right now. But I want to talk about it. I said last week that I felt like LSU was going to send a reasonably representative team over to Houston. And I say that understanding some of what we've seen in LSU football the last 5 years, like the John Trey Kirkland, Kansas State, Texas Bowl was a joke. Like, they didn't have a quarterback. And then the next year, you played Purdue, and all their good players left. And LSU was up 49-0 in that game. And those two games, as I've said many times, soured me on these bowls. I don't know how else to say it other than to say it soured me on the bowls. And I don't have a strong amount of passion for LSU beating Houston in this bowl game. But if I'm going to have to watch it and do a pre- and post-game show for it, I'd at least like it to be representative of two football teams going out there to play. And that's on both sides. Like, I didn't enjoy much watching LSU beat Purdue by 1 billion because it's not interesting. And I certainly didn't find it interesting to watch John Trey Kirkland play quarterback against Kansas State and lose by a lot. So I want there to be representative football teams out there. And it felt like LSU was going to have that last week, and you've started to see some of LSU's talent dwindle. So here's what you're looking for on defense, where you're really going to be missing some guys. You're not going to have Harold Perkins Jr. in this game at the star. Jordan Gilbert's going to fill in for him. You're not going to have Whit Weeks or West Weeks in this game, so those are your two primary linebackers. You're not going to have Jack Pyburn, probably your best defensive end. You're not going to have Mansour Delane, who is your best corner. You're not going to have A.J. Halsey, who has been your best safety. So you're missing your best edge rusher, your best defensive end, your two interior linebackers, your best corner, and your best safety. So that's a significant amount of hits on the defensive side. Who fills in those spots? Well, Jordan Gilbert will play the star. On the ends, you will have what I believe to be Patrick Payton, and then maybe Dylan Carpenter at the other end. At linebacker, you'll have Devon Keys, Tylen Singleton, and then maybe some of those freshmen, Zach Weeks, perhaps Charles Ross. Those guys fill in at linebacker. At safety, Deshaun Spears will play for A.J. Halsey, and your corners will be DJ Pickett and P.J. Woodland. I'm not sure exactly what LSU will do at that nickel spot. We'll see. But you're compromised on defense, and your defense was your calling card. Your defense was the strongest aspect of your team, clearly, and you don't really have its heartbeat. You've got your interior guys on the defensive line. That includes Amon Bro, who's going to play in this game, even though he's going to the transfer portal. But you got Don McKinley, you've got Jacobian Guillory, you got Patrick Payton. You've got a lot up front. Everything beyond that, you're pretty compromised aside from Tamarcus Cooley. So it's a defense that's very different that Houston's going to see. Offensively, on the offensive line, you will be without Josh Thompson, who's been your right guard, who has led LSU in snaps played this year. But beyond that, you've got Braylon Moore, who is expected to play, and you've got Tyree Adams coming back to play left tackle, where he's missed the last month of the season. So your offensive line from left to right, Tyree Adams, Cohen Eccles, Braylon Moore, Paul Mabenga, Weston Davis, and Carius Kern is available in this game. He's going to the transfer portal as well, but he is going to play in this game. So you've got your offensive line intact outside of Josh Thompson. And then you go back to quarterback, where Garrett Nussmeier is not going to play. You go out to wide receiver. Aaron Anderson is not going to play. I don't. Matt wrote about this, and let me make sure that I'm correct on this. Nick Anderson is expected to play at wide receiver. So you've got a wide receiver core that does have Kyle Parker, that does have Nick Anderson, that does have Chris Hilton, that does have some guys that you've counted on. Certainly, you've counted a lot on Xavier Thomas as well. He's there. Trey Green is basically a wide receiver. He's available in the game as well. So you've got a lot there. At running back, I think Caden Durham and Harlan Berry are expected to be there. So your offense is pretty well intact outside of right guard. It's just not that good. So that's where you are there. Michael Van Buren will play in this game at quarterback. Juwan Johnson is going to play in this game. He talked to Matt Moscona on After Further Review 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, that said that he was going to enter the transfer portal, but he was going to play with LSU. So as I look at LSU's team, I see an offense that is really scuffling and bordering on inept, and I have a defense that's without the majority of its best players. So it's a compromised team that LSU is sending out there. However, there is not a position that's been impacted to the point where you can't fill the hole. And in some cases, you're going to see guys who have an opportunity to be impact players on next year's team. I'm thinking about Deshaun Spears. I'm thinking about Dylan Carpenter. I'm thinking about your young offensive linemen who theoretically could return. I'm thinking about young linebackers like Zach Weeks, like Charles Ross, like Tylen Singleton, who hasn't played a ton this year. I'm thinking about the opportunity of DJ Pickett to step into that number one cornerback role where he will be next year with Mansour Delane moving on. So it's kind of a catch-22. It's kind of a how do you choose to look at it? And I'll just tell y'all, here's how I'll look at it. I'm just assessing LSU's young players and hoping that they're back. Whether or not LSU beats Houston, I just can't muster a lot of energy on that. LSU will be on the field. That's great. I'll hope that they win. But I when I watch LSU play, I generally am very anxious, very nervous on pins and needles. And that just won't be the case for this game. It's just kind of that part has been removed for me personally. I'm not telling you it should be removed for you or that it needs to be removed from you, just how I feel personally. So it's a deal where you've got enough players at every position to not have some sort of glaring issue. You don't have to move a wide receiver to running back. You don't have to make a safety go play corner. You don't have a gross deficiency of linebacker. And then quarterback's the most important thing. It's not that issue. It's just that LSU's just not going to send a very strong team out there. And I get the sense that Houston is going to field the majority of its roster and is fired up to play a big brand in LSU. And so LSU's going to be up against it from that perspective. My interest level is less about the result of the game and more about the guys who are young that could come back that I'd like to see make some plays. And I think the player who's got the most on the line in this game for LSU is Michael Van Buren. And I don't say that because I think that he's playing to try to impress Lane Kiffin. I say that because every player on a college football roster is a free agent in January. All of them, if they have eligibility left. All of them. And at that point, it's time to negotiate contracts. And Michael Van Buren has one more chance to go out there and play to help himself at the negotiating table at LSU or wherever he may be beyond this. And he's a guy that's got a lot on the line in this game because his 3 games of action haven't been awesome. He had a couple of moments against Arkansas. There wasn't anything to write home about in a game against Western Kentucky where you scored 13 points and LSU couldn't get out of neutral at all in Norman. You got one more chance. So it's a big deal for Michael Van Buren in this game and anybody who's going to be negotiating, but I think he has the most to gain potentially in this game. So that's just a look at where LSU is from a personnel perspective before we start to break down this game. I wrote a piece at LouisianaSports.net yesterday that went up today called Statistically Speaking that breaks down Houston by the numbers and what they are. And I'll tell you this, we're going to talk about it later on. This is the most unremarkable team on paper I've ever seen. Not bad or good. It's just even Steven. But I think that you look at LSU, you've got a strength that's on your defense that's not really going to be out there. You got a weakness in your offense that's going to have most of its pieces, but it just hasn't been very good. So that's where LSU is entering the Kinder's Texas Bowl against Houston. We'll talk a little bit more about it as we move forward. LSU staff looks to be complete. I think they got a running backs coach. Saw that yesterday on Twitter. I'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathandClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. David has been at this for 3 decades. He is licensed, bonded, insured as a master plumber there at the Ready, and he's here to help you with all your needs in a bathroom remodel. It could be extensive. You could redo the entire thing. They do that kind of thing all the time. Take out showers, make them linen closets, take out big oversized jacuzzi tubs, make that a gorgeous glass walk-in shower, handle the floors, handle the vanity. They can do the whole thing for you at One Bath and Closets. You can see pictures of their great work online at onebathandclosets.com. But it doesn't have to be that big, that sizable, that labor-intensive, that time-intensive, that cost-intensive. It can be a tub-to-shower conversion that can be done in 3 to 5 days. Boom, done. And financing options are available. So whether it's a big project that you've got or something that can be very simple, David Vaughn and his team are happy to do that. Don't just call the guy down the street, hand him some cash, and see what he can do. Go with the company that's been at it for 3 decades. Call David Duvall or check him out online at onebathandclosets.com. Onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
A little bit of news on Twitter yesterday. LSU football sent out a tweet, said Sunday Fun Day. It had Lane Kiffin and most of his staff walking up the stairs. And it just really struck me as to how odd this entire situation is. Because a lot of the guys in the video are going to be coaching Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl coming up in a week. And they're on LSU staff. And one of those guys is Kevin Smith, who we now believe will be LSU's running backs coach. The reports came out yesterday. We've got it at LouisianaSports.net, about $1 million. And Kevin Smith's going to join Lane Kiffin. He's been with him 8 of the last 9 years as running backs coach. Started over at FAU and then up to Ole Miss. He's thought of as a very, very good recruiter. Thought of as a guy with a very, very tight relationship with Kewan Lacey. And now thought to be LSU's running backs coach. And so you look at this offensive staff that LSU has put together under Lane Kiffin, and you've got Charlie Weiss Jr., who's calling the plays for Ole Miss in the playoff. You've got Kevin Smith, who's coaching the running backs for Ole Miss in the playoff. You've got Joe Cox, who is coaching the tight ends for Ole Miss in the playoff. And you got George McDonald, who's coaching the Ole Miss wide receivers in the playoff. And their season's still going on, but they left Oxford after Ole Miss beat Tulane and came down to Baton Rouge, and they're getting stuff put in at the football ops building over there. It's wild. It's crazy. But it's the staff that Lane Kiffin really wanted to put together. The only piece he had to alter was offensive line coach, where you go get Eric Wolford, who's spent time at Kentucky and Alabama recently. And you've got essentially the brain trust that put things together in Oxford coming to Baton Rouge. And as I've said for the last month, like, it's just difficult for me to suggest that LSU is not going to field a really good offense in year one with these guys. You've got to go get players, and there's no doubt. And that, to me, opens the door to players leaving Oxford to come to Baton Rouge. And I think you start with the top 2 headliners in Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey. And we played the bites from those 2 guys last week when they were asked about potentially being in the portal, when they were asked about whether or not they'd be at Ole Miss next year, and like they just dismissed it all. And it's the same thing we saw from Lane Kiffin, kind of dismissing it all. And when that happens, it's just natural to connect dots and go, okay, they're going to show up. And the thought in Oxford is that Kewan Lacey is likely going to follow Kevin Smith, and the thought down in Baton Rouge is like, well, do either or Harlan Berry, Caden Durham head to Oxford for Frank Wilson. It's bizarre. And we'll see. What I found fascinating was I was listening to yesterday's podcast from Neil McCready and Chase Parham, who cover Ole Miss for 24/7. And they were sitting there the day after Ole Miss has won a college football playoff game. And they're looking ahead to the to the quarterfinal in the Superdome, in the Sugar Bowl, and neither one of them, based on the conversations they had, were sure if the Ole Miss assistants that coached in the first game were going to coach in the second game. There was a thought, perhaps, that the new offensive coordinator, who's from East Carolina, who had worked under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss and runs a similar offense, maybe he would take over because he's going to be the offensive coordinator next year, and there's enough time between games where that's crazy to me. But the fact of the matter, no one knows. Now, the people in the decision-making process know, but like us on the outside, we just don't have that information. And I think there are some people who are flustered by this on the outside. If you're an LSU fan, you're going, why are you letting Frank Wilson coach this team? Let Blake Baker do it. Send him to Oxford. And you've got Ole Miss fans that are like, I don't know if we really want – it's weird on every front. But we're starting to get some finality to it. And so I want to end with Kevin Smith here, and then we'll move to the defensive side of the ball because you've got hires on that side too. I was not going to be okay with LSU letting Frank Wilson walk out the door, especially to Texas, but even to Ole Miss, if Kevin Smith wasn't coming from Oxford. Because I felt like that would have been in the same vein as the Corey Raymond decision that Brian Kelly made, where you didn't have your guy, and then you didn't keep the LSU guy. With Kevin Smith coming, you've at least got a pedigree of worked for Kiffin, dynamic recruiter, thought to be, has worked in the SEC, and the Lacey connection, where we had the FaceTime that Lane Kiffin had that was recorded where he said that Kejuan Lacey and Kevin Smith were coming. But it feels likely that's going to happen. I would have been upset if Smith had stayed in Oxford, Frank Wilson had gone to Texas, and then you would have hired just some Joe running backs coach. I think that would have been a step down. Yeah, I've made my feelings clear about that. But with Smith coming, I feel less emotional and passionate about Frank Wilson leaving the program. I'll say that because I think you've got a proven guy that is really beloved in Oxford for what he's done there. So I think that's a good thing, and I think LSU's offensive staff looks exactly the way that Lane Kiffin wants it. And then the defense. You got Blake Baker to stick around, held off Tulane there. And then because Baker's there, you keep Kevin Peoples and Jake Olson, who he brought with him from Missouri to coach the safeties and the edge rushers. And then you keep Corey Raymond, which is obviously a huge, huge deal. And that's the lion's share of your defensive staff from last year that has really turned this thing around in Baton Rouge. You just need to hire a defensive line coach. Kyle Williams getting out of college coaching. And it appears that they've hired Sterling Lucas from South Carolina to be the defensive line tackles coach, basically. And you keep the continuity that you had with an ascending defense. That should also help you with player retention if you've got mostly the same coaches. The thing with Lucas, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know everything there is to know about evaluating defensive line coaches, especially when they're not in Baton Rouge. But you look at what South Carolina has been on the defensive front the last couple of years. You look at what Dylan Stewart was in high school and became in the college level. You look at what Kyle Kennard did transferring to South Carolina and playing the way that he did. You had two guys on the All-SEC team on the defensive ends this year from South Carolina. It has been the strongest position group in that program has been their defensive line the last two seasons. And I don't know exactly how much credit needs to be afforded to Sterling Lucas for that. I would imagine a good bit. And so I think that's a great hire. And, this is something it's not something I want to spend a lot of time doing, but it would be negligent for me not to spend time doing it. You think about the transfer portal opening, position coaches leaving, and potentially we're talking about it with Kejuan Lacey and running backs. Why wouldn't I talk about it with Dylan Stewart and his position coach coming to LSU? That's a guy might want to get involved with because he's really talented and going to be a first-round pick next year. So now you consider that may be a guy that ends up at LSU. You're seeing a lot of reports of guys re-signing places. It's just like free agency. And if you see a deal where Dylan Stewart, re-signs, I don't know how binding that is, but could happen. Maybe he's in the portal. And that's the first thing I start to think of when you look at position coach hires is the impact that they're going to have on player acquisition in year one. And I think from LSU side on defense, you've got all your position coaches back but one on defense to help retain some players. And then you go fill that one slot you had open with a guy who is attached to one of the most talented players in the country. Could he end up in Baton Rouge? Maybe. Not ruling it out. I'm not tampering. I'm just a radio host. To be tampering assistant coaches talking, me, I can just discuss it. And that's something that would be very interesting if I was LSU and realize that I've got his position coach headed this way. So I think Lane Kiffin's staff, as I look at it as a whole, is very, very strong because you've taken the Ole Miss offense and brought that brain trust and talent acquisition group under Kiffin to Baton Rouge. And you've got a defensive staff that took over a terrible situation 2 years ago, have rectified that and made it into a top 20 operation in college football. And now they're remaining with one small change at defensive tackle coach in Baton Rouge. I think that's really good. So you look at this staff that Lane Kiffin's put together in year one, there's a lot to like. Lot to like about what LSU has got here. We'll see what they can do now with roster acquisition after the Texas Bowl coming up on Saturday. That'll be wildly fascinating to see how aggressive and successful LSU can be in the transfer portal now that they've got the staff kind of in place. And we'll see what these former Ole Miss kind of current head coach, kind of current Ole Miss coaches do about the Sugar Bowl. It's right down the road. They can get there pretty quick, but they got to practice as well. So it's a bizarre situation that I don't know that I could have forecast 10 years ago. But here we are with Ole Miss having former coaches, but kind of current coaches that are definitely LSU coaches, but still kind of Ole Miss coaches. Bizarre stuff in college football is what it is. We got 30 minutes left to go. Come back with us. The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Fabry Chevrolet GMC. Fabry Chevrolet GMC. You know what you're going to get with the Fabry family because you've gotten it for 35 years in this city. 3 locations, 5 brands. You know you're going to get phenomenal customer service. You know you're going to be treated right. And they are so excited about this new location, Highway 61 in St. Francisville. Under new ownership, the Fabry family, since October 1st, got an incredible, huge inventory of GMCs and Chevrolets. Looking for a Tahoe? They got them. Looking for Silverado? Got them. Suburban? Got those too. All those Chevys on the lot. Looking for a Sierra, Yukon, Denali, the GMCs? They got those as well. Check it out. It's FabryChevrolet.com. You can check out the entire inventory there. You can see some of their fantastic deals as well. And you know your buying experience is going to be a very, very positive one because you know the Fabry name and you know how much of a pillar they are in the Baton Rouge community. And they're thrilled to be up in St. Francisville on Highway 61. Stop in and see them. Stop in the service department if you need your car tuned up. They service all makes in the service department there. Highway 61 in St. Francisville. It's Fabry Chevrolet GMC. FabryChevrolet.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
All right, coming down the home stretch here. Final 30 minutes of our Monday show. We'll have another show tomorrow, regularly scheduled programming, and then we'll be off for the final 3 days of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, for some family time. Back in action, for me at least, pregame show for the Texas Bowl on Saturday, and then another short work week the following week with the New Year holiday in the middle of it. But just today and tomorrow for us here, so appreciate y'all for hanging out with us. I write a piece on LouisianaSports.net every Monday during football season called Statistically Speaking, where I just simply list out all the statistics for LSU's next opponent. It's not meant to be the most thoughtful piece ever. It lays out information, and I color code it. Things that are good in the top 25 in the country, I put in green. Things that are bad in the bottom 50 of the country, I put in red. There are 136, 137 teams in the country, so if you're worse than 86th in something. I put it in red. If you're in the top 25, I put it in green. And I was really taken back looking at Houston offensively and defensively, because so rarely would I be able to put any of their statistics in either bucket. They are so unremarkable at everything, meaning just like average. They're not terrible at much of anything. They're not great at much of anything. On offense, the only two top 25 statistics that Houston has nationally are rushing attempts per game. They're 21st in the country. They run it a lot. And time of possession, they're 25th in the country at just over 31 minutes per game. So this is a Willie Fritz offense. You know they're going to run the ball. They've got Connor Wigman as their quarterback. You've seen him play in maroon and white. It was not all that pleasant. He's a limited quarterback who's got some decent athleticism. Houston just wants to run the ball. But they're not like awful at a lot either. The only bottom 50 statistics they have are ironically rushing touchdowns. They run it a ton. They don't run for a lot of touchdowns. Passing attempts, they're 98th in the country. And then explosive plays, 20-plus yard plays, they're 86th in the country in that. But everything else, third down conversions, interceptions thrown, passing touchdowns, yard per carry, total offense, scoring offense, all of that is between 26th in the country and 85th in the country. All of it. Just about average at everything. And I guess that's kind of how you become a 9-3 Big 12 team. It's not a very good league. They got whacked by Texas Tech, who's the good team in the league. They held their own with everybody else, dropped a couple, and they're unremarkable on offense. But what about the defense? Was that anything? No, it's not. In the top 25, you've got passing touchdowns allowed, where they're 20th, and you've got red zone touchdown percentage allowed. They're 9th in the country at preventing touchdowns in the red zone. So that's a good thing to be, but that's it. Those are the only two stats there in the top 25. And then you've got the things that are in the bottom, and there's only two of those as well. They're 119th in terms of tackles for loss, and then they give up a lot of big plays in the passing game. They're 89th in 20-plus yard passing plays allowed. Well, LSU is not going to hurt Houston with big plays through the air. LSU is awful at creating big plays through the air. I'll be stunned if LSU hits a bunch of 20-yard passes on Saturday. And LSU has been bad in the red zone offensively, and Houston has been very good at preventing touchdowns. But they're not great in terms of creating disruption in the backfield. They're 73rd in sacks. They're 119th in tackles for loss. So they don't get after you up front. LSU's offensive line hasn't been good. Houston shouldn't be able to just dominate LSU there in the way that Oklahoma did at times. But they're not remarkable anywhere else. There's just a bunch of 41st, 46th, 39th, 44th, 40th, 48th, 59th. These are the stats I'm reading off. They just don't do a lot great. So what I've done here is really probably not jazz you up for the Texas Bowl here. It's a Houston team that is remarkably average across the board. Offense, defense, running game, passing game, run defense, pass defense, blah, is what it is. And so I did that exercise, and I put it up at LouisianaSports.net. I know that I've done such a great sales pitch, you're just going to want to run there and read about that. But I did that, and it was the first thing I had learned about Houston thus far. The only things I knew about Houston when I started this exercise were that Willie Fritz is their head coach, that Connor Wigman's their quarterback, and that they're in the Big 12. Like, that's all I had. So I was curious after doing that exercise and learning about what Houston's identity is, which is run heavy, not great, average at scoring offense and everything else across the board. Defensively, give up some big plays, not disruptive. Like, that's Houston. Like, I wonder what that means for the line in this game. And I kind of figured when I went through that exercise, I was like, I think Houston will probably be favored. They have more guys playing. They've won 9 games. LSU's got guys sitting out on a good defense, and the offense has been brutal. LSU scored 13 points on Western Kentucky. Couldn't get more than one touchdown against Oklahoma. Like, I think Houston will be favored. And they were. Houston's a favorite by 2.5 points in this game. And that probably sounds about right. Like, I'll give my final pick tomorrow. I think I will probably pick Houston to win the game because I just don't trust LSU's offense to score a lot. But this is not a very good Houston team. They don't do much well. And I don't think a ton of Connor Wigman as a college starting quarterback. That is 98% due to what he was at Texas A&M and 2% what he's been this year. But he's thrown for 2,400 yards and 21 touchdowns and 9 picks. He's been fine. But it's – I thought this morning at my desk, what's the hook for the Texas Bowl? Like what can I talk about that's interesting for the Texas Bowl? And I think the most interesting thing about the Texas Bowl is that there's nothing interesting about the Texas Bowl. Like it's the perfect irony. Does either team have a superstar? No. Is there some sort of rivalry? No. Is there a player to highlight or a matchup to highlight? Not really. Like, is there a clash of styles? No. Like, there's just nothing remarkable about this game. And I think that's the most remarkable thing about it. It's a weird dichotomy, weird way to think, but I can't sit here in good faith and like blow smoke and give you something that doesn't exist. I'm not going to sit here and fake like there's something super interesting. I think if you're trying to pry and dig and find something there, it's that Houston has a chance to beat a name brand team in its own city and win 10 games. From LSU's perspective, you got a lame duck offensive staff, all eyes on the portal, lots of opt-outs on defense. I don't have much. So I will now summon you, Jordan, to determine what I'm supposed to talk about with this bowl game. What am I missing with this bowl game that I'm supposed to be jazzed up about?
I did like the fact that you're going to see possible – because you don't know who's going to be on the team.
Nope.
That's the hard part about it.
Deshaun Spears.
Pickett. I do like that.
Pickett.
Cooley. I would like to see. But again, you just said it.
Young linebackers.
Yeah, young. I would like just to see. You lose the touch of the bowl games because you don't know who's going to be back with the team. So I'm struggling to be like, I want to see. I'm just going on a limb. Hopefully, DJ Pickett is back. But I want to see what DJ Pickett looks like. I want to see.
The two guys I'm comfortable saying are going to be back for money reasons is DJ Pickett and Trey'Dez Green are on the Nike deal. Yeah. And so I just feel like it's likely they're back. But anybody else?
Free game. They're all free game. It's the Wild West. We know what's going on. So, but I think that the nucleus of what the secondary could look like next year with the Deshaun Spears, your Coolies, your PJ Woodlands. I would like to see what. Oh, yeah, Pickett. I would like to see what they look like.
And it would be cool if you were playing like a high-flying team, but you're playing a team that runs the ball a ton.
And
so like there's just less intrigue there.
There is, and I think the biggest problem, like you said earlier, was that LSU really doesn't have much to play for, and Houston's going to be juiced up. Like they're going to try and embarrass you. Like they're going to try their very best to go out there and make a statement. We already know how these out-of-conference teams look at the SEC like, oh, the SEC's burning. Oh, they can't beat Houston. Oh, look at it. You already know how they're gonna be talking. So I think that it could be a good problem to have, knowing that they're gonna try and bust you in the mouth, and you better come with it because they're gonna try their best to embarrass you. So if LSU's they come in there sleepwalk, and I promised Houston's gonna punch them in the mouth. But the only positive outlook I can say that you can be hype about, knowing that if they don't bring it, they're going to get embarrassed. So they better bring it because the Houston's going to try and embarrass them.
We will see. All right. Look at that. Sorry, that's not very good radio for me to read text messages, but it was. I saw two words in a text message that piqued my interest. Something's coming up on LouisianaSports.net. Matt's writing up right now. I'm going to see if I can get some information on that and then maybe talk about it in the next segment, but we'll see. We got one segment to go. We'll come back and close it out next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website, HighlandIG.com. Look, I tell you about property and casualty all the time with the Highland Insurance Group. They're great at it. They're also great with benefits, employee benefits, health insurance for your business. That's a big deal in terms of talent acquisition and talent retention. You got to make sure your benefits are good. And there is a specific carrier that a lot of folks have that are really raising rates. And Jonathan Carver and his team at the Highland Insurance Group have seen an uptick in calls that they've gotten saying, hey, I'm just so uncomfortable with this benefits premium increase. Can we get another option? And they can. They absolutely can. So if you're looking for a second option, another opinion on benefits for your business in 2026, because rates are just getting to a spot that's untenable for you and your bottom line, contact the Howland Insurance Group and say, hey, what can we do? Jonathan Carver and his team would be happy to sit down with you with those benefits, have that discussion. Of course, as I mentioned, they're great with property and casualty as well. They can handle that for you. If you're a January renewal, want to get in there and see them, you can certainly do it. They're online at highlandig.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group, online at highlandig.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Wrapping up shop here on this Monday. Appreciate you hanging out with us. It's actually been a really fast-moving show. I figured it would be with all the stuff that went on over the weekend. We've covered a lot. Talked about college football playoff, both the good games and the ridiculous games. We talked about LSU and the Texas Bowl. We talked about the Saints getting a big win back on Sunday. So plenty that we've discussed, including LSU basketball. Briefly, Tigers back on the hardwood tonight, 7 o'clock against Prairie View A&M. I got a preview of that game up at LouisianaSports.net. Prairie View's best player from Scotlandville, and he'll be getting some shots up tonight. He's a volume shooter. I'm sure he'll be putting them up in front of friends and family tonight in the PMAC. So it'll be LSU and Prairie View. I don't anticipate the Tigers having any issues with Prairie View this evening. 2 more non-conference games for LSU before they get into the grind of conference play, starting with the 1st of January. So lots that we've covered over the last 2 hours. Appreciate y'all for being with us. Hope y'all are traveling safely if you're doing that. Palmers are headed north tomorrow after the show. Going to head north to Shreveport for a couple of days. Be back on Saturday for pregame for LSU and Texas in the Texas Bowl. Tomorrow's show is going to be jam-packed. We've got to get everything in for the entire week in tomorrow's show. So we'll talk a little bit about the Saints and the Titans. We will talk about LSU and Houston. We'll give picks for those games. We'll talk about the college football playoff that's coming up. Lots that we'll do on tomorrow's show, including chat with Glenn West and Sharif Ishak and Colin Jeter as well. So fired up for tomorrow's show, and then we'll be done for the week. But for today, one last order of business is, of course, take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Presented to you by Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer, crafted by America's oldest brewery. Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
Flight by Yingling. It's the next generation of light beer. If you're swinging by and picking up something cold on the way to the family gathering for Christmas, make it Flight by Yingling. You're going to have 3 or 4 light beer right here. 95 calories, 2.6 carbs, delicious flavor, everything you're looking for in that light beer. It is Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer.
All right, let's start it off with everybody's favorite Notre Dame, as it's been announced today that Notre Dame and USC are preparing to skip their annual rivalry game just for the second time in 8 decades. Administration plans to restart the rivalry in 2030, apparently. The news comes at the same day as the Fighting Irish announced a new agreement to play BYU in 2026 and 2027. Is this the end of out-of-conference rivalry games? Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. We'll still have plenty of those. Well, it sounds like Notre Dame and USC will play. But look, it's Notre Dame has control of its schedule. Yes. They're the only team that does. And I don't think that that's equitable. I think it's ridiculous. And they only played 3 difficult games this year, and they lost 2 of them. And one of the games that they played against a difficult team was USC, and now they're taking them off the schedule. So I don't have strong feelings about it. I don't need Notre Dame to play USC in my life. They can. I don't really care. But the fact that they get to manipulate things that other teams can't because you just got to play with the conference gives you, and the SEC's going to 9 league games while Notre Dame's offloading USC, I think it's just a tough thing to reconcile.
especially because they could have played BYU in the Pop-Tart Bowl. I don't know if you feel about the bowl, but like you just ducked them just to go back and
the Pop-Tart Bowl, baby.
You know, I'm just saying you had a chance to play them, but now whatever. We'll see what Notre Dame and BYU got going on. Okay, so North Carolina is hiring Bobby Petrino as his offensive coordinator for Bill Belichick's staff. According to On3's Chris Lowe and Pete Nakos, is Bill building up a coaching Avengers? Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. Look, Petrino is a great offensive coach, man. He is a great offensive coach. It was they were mediocre at Texas A&M, but a lot of that was Jimbo Fisher's offense. But he had a great offense this year at Arkansas. They were a terrible team because they couldn't stop anybody, and they made ridiculous mistakes late in games time and time again. Memphis game was pathetic with the fumbles, and but he scores points, and he had Taylor Green leading the country in total offense, and I thought it would have been reasonable for Arkansas to keep him around, but he's going to score points at North Carolina, I'm sure. We'll see.
I mean, we'll see, especially because we seen who his past coordinator was, my cousin Freddie Kitchens. So it's time, we need to upgrade, Bill. We need to upgrade. So Juwan Johnson, everybody's favorite Saint, is currently 5th in receptions by a tight end with 70 and 4th in yards at 733 yards, plus 3 touchdowns. Was Juwan Johnson contract over the offseason was a big talking point. So was it worth it looking back at it? Take it or leave it?
Leave.
Just leave it alone.
I mean, leave it. It's a longer deal than I wanted. It's more money than I wanted.
It was 30 million?
Yeah, but for a very average player. But he had a nice game on Sunday. Yeah. By all accounts, a great guy in the locker room. But I was at a point this offseason where I didn't want to add significant dollars, especially not long term, and that's a reasonably long term deal. So I didn't like the deal then. I don't like it now. You've got some guys that are coming off the books, and that's great. And Juwan Johnson's had a nice year, which is great. But I feel like you could have moved on and gotten cheaper than you did, because I didn't care what the outcomes of games was this year.
Yeah.
So is it a disaster? Is it prohibitive to the franchise in the same way that like Deshaun Watson's contract is? No, it's not. But would I like a do-over? Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Man, him and Shuck, man, they got a nice little combo. There was college. That's crazy to even say that there was college roommates, and Shuck is just getting to the NFL. It's a little, we got to do something about this COVID year stuff. I'm tired of this, but I don't know, man. If Shuck keeps unlocking them, especially because
I didn't ask you how you're feeling about the Saints.
How am I feeling right now? Listen, man, you know how I'm feeling. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling Saints win streak, Pelicans win streak. Like I'm just a winner at the moment, so I'm feeling great.
I was in New Orleans last night for dinner with some buddies, and one of my buddies that was at dinner had been at a cocktail party previously, and there was a guy there that was telling folks, he said he heard him say it 3 times, the Saints forgot how to lose. They forgot how to lose.
Hey, man, you see it, man. Kellen, look, I was a little hard on Kellen Moore. I can't remember what game it was. It's like, dude, the play calling was god-awful. But these last 3 games, I don't know if it's just he feels more confident with Shuck at quarterback, but he's opened up the playbook. Like it's the
Mason Tipton reverse, Taysom throwing the ball.
We can. I know we don't got no running backs right now. We can slow it down.
You got no running backs.
Yeah, we have no running backs. So let's slow it down with the Taysom touches. But he had it.
Estimate made one really good play where he made 2 guys miss on the sideline,
and that was a grand opening, grand closing. Like that was about all you saw from him and I think the other guy Hall.
But that makes it more impressive for Shuck that he's doing it with no running game and no wide receivers outside of Olave. But as I said in the Saints segment to open the show, like if you don't have any wide receivers besides Olave, target Olave 16 times, which they did. Great. So it works for me.
And he also came out and was like, I was contemplating retiring because Derek Carr was giving me all these concussions and all that. So, so the fact that Carr is out the building and now he feels like he's full of life again, hey, man, the sky's the limit. Pelicans make it 5 in a row tonight. You got the Mavericks. Sky's the limit, bro. I don't want to get too hyped. You said it's the Jets. You're right. You're 1,000% correct.
It is the Jets.
They were
the
abysmal.
Jets are just terrible.
Yeah, they're terrible. I'm not even going to act like this was
8 sacks.
Yeah, this ain't a riveting win like that. But what you just said.
What it's really going to come down to here is I think they will beat Tennessee. If they don't, then we'll revisit the conversation. But I think they will beat Tennessee.
Yeah.
What it will then come down to is, okay, can you go to Atlanta and win? If they do that, we'll be cooking with grease in the offseason.
You're cooking. Oh, forget grease. You starting a whole cookout, barbecue, all that. If they could do that, all I'm going to say is this. If the Saints can find some type of if you finish the season 7-10, that's a win. No matter what you say, like, that is a win. You came into the year maybe 3 games at most. So that's it for Take It or Leave It.
All right, brought to you by Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer. Always remind y'all, especially if you're traveling, looking for something to listen to on long drives or flights, you can catch our stuff on demand. If you just want LSU, hunt on LSU. If you just want Saints, hunt on Saints. All of our full shows are archived on YouTube or wherever you find your sound. So appreciate y'all for like, subscribe, rate, review. Jordan and Cassie do a great job of getting those updated daily. So those are available if you're looking for something to listen to over the course of the next few days with travel. We'll back tomorrow, and that'll be our last show of the week as we break the final 3 days of the week for Christmas. Matt's out this week and next week. Musa is going to drive you home next on After Further Review. We are back tomorrow. One more pre-Christmas show. 1 to 3 weekdays right here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Remind you about First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust. When did they start up, First American Bank and Trust? Well, they did in 1910. Things are a little different then. Things are a little different now. They're still here, 115 years later. They got 25 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana. So if you're here in Baton Rouge, if you're over at Jones Creek in Dutchtown, up I-12, St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, down Bayou with St. James, St. John, Lafourche Parish, Terrebonne. No matter where you are, Southeast Louisiana, First American Bank and Trust has got a branch near you. And the folks that work there, they're part of the community. All the decisions made on their commercial loans, their personal loans, are made here in South Louisiana. So you don't call center in Chicago or San Francisco, get the runaround. No, you deal with people that are here. They want to wish everybody around a Merry, Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday Season. Stop by and see them. Bank with someone local. It's First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust.